This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Final farewell. Good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast. America remembering former President Jimmy Carter.
Carter, of course, was this nation's longest living president. He died just before the new year, only a few months after turning 100.
Correspondent Craig Melvin at the National Cathedral, where Carter was honored this morning with a state funeral. All 5 living presidents were there. Carter's grandson says the public display of love means a lot.
People should know just how much he loved this country and the people that are out there connecting with him. That connection that people are feeling to him was very real for him as well.
Carter's remains are being flown this afternoon back to his hometown of Plains, Georgia. Reporter Jim Crisula.
There will be a memorial service at his beloved Maranatha Baptist Church. His body will then be taken the short distance to his home, where he will be buried next to his wife of 77 years, Rosalind.
All government office buildings are closed today in observance of a national day of mourning for America's 39th president. The largest wildfire in LA history has chased more than 100,000 from their homes. These Malibu residents could only watch in horror as their homes burned to the ground.
It's devastating. You feel like you're on a movie set. This does not feel real. It's gone. That's all we got.
It doesn't even look like a house anymore.
2,000 homes and businesses have been lost to the flames, and the death toll continues to climb. Reporter Lori Perez in the Pacific Palisades.
Watching these flames erupt, I mean, it's so ferocious. If you haven't been close to a fire like this, I don't think you can adequately understand how intense it is, how hot it is.
NBC's Dylan Dreyer.
I don't want to overuse the word apocalyptic, but I honestly don't know how else to describe this. Fire's so hot, it melted steel.
No word yet on what sparked the fires, which were brought to life by blistering Santa Ana winds. California Governor Gavin Newsom.
There's no fire season in California, and it's year-round, but to have this level of the acuity of fires is without precedent. These winds are without precedent.
Newsom admits he did not appreciate President-elect Trump taking issue with his response to the fire.
People have lost their lives. Kids lost their schools. Families completely torn asunder. Churches burned down. This guy wanted to politicize.
Trump argues the governor's environmental policies led to a water shortage in L.A. Firefighters yesterday ran out of water while battling the blazes. From fire to ice, the South bracing for a rare snowstorm. Reporter Priscilla Thompson.
There are more than 100 million people that are bracing for this frigid winter weather that is on the way, and many of them in the South and the Southeast, places that are not used to dealing with that snow and ice.
Shovelable accumulations are possible in cities like Dallas. Meteorologist David Parkinson.
It's not like a 1 day or 2 day shot of cold air. You're going to be seeing that straight through the weekend. Then you combine that with the precipitation, so you get snow and ice there. It's not melting anytime soon because you've got that cold air locked in place.
Our long-term forecast has temperatures below freezing for much of the month of January. A lot of schools in central New York were closed or delayed today due to sub-zero wind chills. The people who load and unload ships have averted a strike that was set to begin next week.
The International Longshoremen's Association has reached a tentative 6-year contract deal with shipping and port operators ahead of next week's deadline. Union dock workers had staged a 3-day strike back in October before suspending it and continuing talks after agreeing to a more than 60% pay bump.
Correspondent Chanel Call in Washington. Still to come on the Noon Report, a warning to throughway toll evaders, combating school bullying, and sinkhole forces evacuations.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams. We're still in the midst of a very cold cold air mass, but it will relent some heading into the weekend, but there'll be some more snow to talk about. I'll have forecast details coming up in 10.
All right, Kevin, thank you very much. Let's check what's happening where you live next, all across New York and Pennsylvania. No need to check the mailbox today. The U.S. Postal Service will not be delivering mail as part of the National Day of Mourning for former President Jimmy Carter. All federal offices closed today. America's 39th president died 4 days after Christmas at the age of 100. I spoke earlier today with political pundit Dr. Steve Coleman about the complicated legacy of Jimmy Carter. I was looking up a few stats about Jimmy Carter this morning. I did not realize that he was the only president to have graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy. He was also, and I thought this was fascinating, the first president born in a hospital, Steve. Jimmy Carter. So some interesting factoids about America's 39th president. When you think about the president, Jimmy Carter, what sticks in your mind?
Well, I think, Bob, Jimmy Carter is a great lesson for people, young people across the country. And that lesson is you can fail at something and then have a second act and succeed. He failed miserably as president of the United States. But then after he left, he established himself as a humanitarian, and he made a difference. I think that's the lesson of Jimmy Carter.
Of course, many people remember him from the work he did with Habitat for Humanity. The fact that he was America's oldest living president, lived to be 100, and is being buried today next to his wife, Rosalind. They were married 77 years. Jimmy Carter taught Sunday school in the same church for half a century. A strong man of faith. Which president in the modern era does he most remind you of? A lot of folks have been drawing comparisons between him and Biden. Do you think that's a fair comparison?
Yes, I do. Both Biden and Jimmy Carter considered weak on the international stage. Both considered to have the milquetoast personalities. You pointed up his work with Habitat for Humanity. He gets an A+ for that. Also, a very moral man. No reports of him fooling around and committing adultery and all that. None of that stuff.
Yeah.
He was a very moral man, very loyal to his wife and very loyal to his country.
Dr. Steve Coleman weighing in today on the life and legacy of the late President Jimmy Carter, whom America is bidding a final farewell today. The hustle and bustle is back at the New York State Capitol as the 2025 legislative session gets underway. Affordability is the big buzzword in Albany this year as lawmakers tackle bread and butter topics like childcare costs and housing prices. Senate Minority Leader Rob Orr doubts that the Democrats, though, have the right prescription for what ails New York.
You can't spend your way to affordability. If New York could spend our way to affordability, we would be the most affordable state.
Governor Hochul will lay out her legislative priorities in her fourth State of the State speech that's set for next Tuesday in Albany. Pro-family forces fear physician-assisted suicide could be made legal this year in New York.
The bill gives doctors permission to help terminally ill patients die. But New York Catholic Conference Executive Director Dennis Paust says it can be easily abused and pointed to Canada's law, which has already been expanded to apply to people with chronic illness, too. Sarah Harnish, Family Life News.
1 out of every 20 deaths in Canada right now is the result of doctor-assisted dying. Planned Parenthood is making a concerted effort to infiltrate school board elections in Pennsylvania this year.
School boards serve as the gatekeepers, and so when Planned Parenthood wants to get their explicit sex education programs in, they want this control of the school board so they can grease the skids to get what they want in the schools and target our children.
Michael Geer at the Pennsylvania Family Institute says transgender operations on minors become a major moneymaker in the Commonwealth.
Children's Hospital in Philadelphia, it's called CHOP, and maybe that acronym kind of fits with what they're doing to mutilate minors. They've been viewed as the #1 hospital in the country in terms of doing this kind of stuff.
Geer wants legislation in Harrisburg that would ban the use of taxpayer dollars going toward funding gender reassignment surgery on kids. A good government entertainment group in Albany thinks the Trump administration will get a lot of pushback from the state of New York when it comes to trying to deport dangerous illegal immigrants.
And we're already hearing that in New York. So on one hand, the governor is reaching out to the president, realizing that a lot of the resources that the state receives, she's going to need help from the president. But on the other hand, there's resistance in the state legislature, and they're really doing everything they can to prepare for and to build up walls to really maintain things like the sanctuary state status.
Jason McGuire with New York Families. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro may have a challenger for his job. Republican Congressman Dan Mueser is seriously considering a run for that office next year. Shapiro was first elected as governor in 2022, garnering 56% of the vote. Some central New York lawmakers have a $500 million question for Governor Hochul. Here's Family Life's Mark Webster.
10 of those lawmakers signed a letter to Hochul asking her to sign off on a $450 million capital investment requested by the SUNY Board of Trustees to upgrade the emergency department at SUNY Upstate Hospital. Upstate has the second longest wait times of all hospitals of its kind in New York State. Mark Webster, Family Life News.
Rochester Regional Health in Western New York is temporarily reducing its number of available hospital beds. It's due to a nursing shortage. While the number of beds is less, hospital leaders stress in no way will patient care be affected. Angry parents are demanding stronger action against school bullying by the Spencerport, New York School District.
These kids are running the school, the teachers, the staff. You guys are just there, and the students know it.
Sean Sick is the father of a Spencerport middle schooler who was the victim of a recent bullying incident. His daughter, Leah, tells Wham 13.
I just feel supported, again, relieved that I have so much people here supporting me.
Sick was bullied at the Cosgrove Middle School. 2 students connected to this incident have been arrested. Sick family friend Tanya Silverstowe.
I respectfully request this board to re-look at the standards set forth in the district. Change the consequences for actions on bullying, regardless of the severity that they are.
The school district says it cannot release any details about the bullying of Leah Sick because of privacy laws. The New York State Thruway Authority has just approved a new measure that bans drivers who do not pay their tolls. That means people who do not pay their tolls cannot use the Thruway, says Executive Director Frank Hoare.
Restricting from the Thruway is just another tool that we have and that we will be using to enforce toll regulations and to see that everyone pays their fair share.
Tolls make up 90% of the overall budget of the New York State Thruway Authority. The Thruway is a 570-mile stretch of highway from Western New York to New York City. Well, here's another reason why you should have working carbon monoxide detectors in your home. 3 people found dead this week in a home in Butler, PA, from carbon monoxide poisoning. The CDC says every year 400 Americans die from carbon monoxide poisoning. 14,000 are hospitalized. Carbon monoxide is a colorless, odorless, and tasteless gas. Bird flu continues to spread across the country, and veterinarians say there are some things you should do to protect your pets.
If your dog or cat goes outside, then they need to be under your control at all times so they don't eat any dead birds that might carry bird flu.
Dr. Ann Hohenhaus with the Animal Medical Center.
It feels like a slow motion COVID situation where very, very slowly more and more animals are being affected, and therefore I think we want to not be complacent and take precautions to protect our pets and ourselves.
There are 66 confirmed cases of bird flu in humans, the first human fatality from bird flu reported this week in Louisiana. New York Congresswoman Claudia Tenney is weighing in on those horrific wildfires ravaging in Southern California. She says those fires were avoidable.
It's the result of bad politics and bad
bad policy on the part of the Democrats. They haven't properly maintained their forests. They haven't properly maintained their energy or their water supply.
Firefighters ran out of water while battling the blazes yesterday. Critics contend the reservoirs are running dry in Los Angeles because of environmental policy to save an endangered fish. Pennsylvania emergency officials are asking for the public's help in clearing away snow and ice from fire hydrants. Johnstown Fire Chief Bob Statler says snow-covered hydrants can mean the difference between life and death when it comes to battling house fire.
Clean out around the fire hydrants about 3 feet so that we're not delayed either finding them in some cases, and then we can also get the hoses hooked up to them faster.
Also in Pennsylvania, over a dozen Northampton County residents forced to evacuate their homes due to a massive sinkhole caused by a water main break. The ground started to give way in Hanover Township yesterday, causing a car to sink into its driveway and bricks to fall off a home. 18 people in 6 different homes were forced to evacuate. A new solar farm is coming to North Huntington, Pennsylvania. That's in Westmoreland County. Here's Family Life's Brian Query.
It's the first step in a long approval process that could take 3 years before producing electricity. A zoning officer initially denied the request, but that was overturned by the 5-member North Huntington Zoning Board. The farm is expected to be 30 acres in size. Brian Query, Family Life News.
Western New York City may be going nuclear, nano-nuclear. North Tonawanda studying a plan to use nuclear power to power a crypto mining company. North Tonawanda Mayor Austin Tyler.
It sparks some concerns when anyone hears nuclear. There's a lot of questions. Nano-nuclear is a new energy source. It's smaller nuclear. The questions that come to be are, what happens to the waste? Any potential for explosions?
The mayor admits nano-nuclear power is still years away from reality. Last summer, North Tonawanda passed a 2-year moratorium on any crypto mining. A Latrobe, Pennsylvania woman admits she stole nearly $25,000 from a local swim club to support her gambling addiction. Josie Ruffner worked at the Derry Area Aqua Club and had access to the club's debit card. Penn State football battles Notre Dame tonight in the Orange Bowl. The winner moves on to the national title game. Penn State coach James Franklin says Notre Dame has a great coach.
Honored to compete against Marcus and his Notre Dame football team. Got a ton of respect for Marcus, have followed his career for a long time.
Notre Dame coach Marcus Freeman says the respect is mutual.
As Coach Franklin said, I have a lot of respect for him and the job he's done in college football, and this football team is a very good one that we have to continue to prepare for. We've got to use these next 24 hours to finish our preparation.
Penn State looking for its first shot at a national championship since the 1980s. More sports next. It's the 2-minute drill on Family Life.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob Caro, Anthony Towns, and OG Anunoby both scored 27 points, and Towns grabbed 13 rebounds as the Knicks sent the Garden crowd home happy with a 112-98 win over the Raptors. Josh Hart had a double-double, scoring 21 points and hauling in 11 boards. The win for New York snaps a 3-game losing skid and puts them at 25-13 on the season. Tyrese Maxey had a game-high 29 points to lead the Sixers over the Wizards, 109-103. Slowly and hopefully surely, Philly is working its way back to the 500 mark after a horrendous start to the season. The 76ers now 15-20. The Detroit Pistons have now won 5 in a row after taking down the Nets in Brooklyn 113-98. Noah Clowney led all scorers with 29 points, but the Nets have now lost 3 straight. Elsewhere on the hardwood, the Cavs outlasted the Thunder 129-122. Indiana handled Chicago 129-113. The Trailblazers won easily over the Pelicans 119-100. The Nuggets blew out the Clippers 126-103. And Milwaukee, a 121-105 winner over San Antonio. Action on the ice saw the Caps, Blackhawks, Panthers, and Flames skate to victory. Tonight's the night. Penn State will be gunning for a shot at college football's national championship. The 6th-ranked Nittany Lions will take on number 7 Notre Dame. The Fighting Irish have not won a title since 1988. For Penn State, they last hosted the trophy in 1982. The winner tonight will be in the championship game against either Ohio State or Texas. That is a look at sports.
Thank you, Randy. Man, still to come on the Noon Report. Final farewell to Jimmy Carter. The latest on the Los Angeles wildfires and big storm way down south.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. On the day after the election back in November, several of the hosts of ABC's The View pondered how Vice President Harris could lose despite her, and I quote, perfectly run campaign. A few even wore black to demonstrate their mourning. That evening, a late-night talk show host wept during his opening monologue instead of doing the typical comedy. And of course, on social media, a whole host of women announced the so-called 4B movement, which called for the boycotting of men, the shaving of their heads, and undergoing collective hysterectomies. Now, of course, people getting a little nutty about an election result is nothing new, but the fallout this time has been even more theatrical than usual. Pundits aren't just breaking down the results. Some of them are actually breaking down. And then, of course, they're uploading it to social media. Actress and filmmaker Justine Bateman, better known by Gen Xers as Mallory from Family Ties, recently weighed in on these performances, which come complete with lighting and acting and even set direction. Quote, I've long been fascinated by the decision that many make to film themselves crying and upset. This has been a practice online for many years. As I'm a filmmaker, I'm curious about the origin motivation for them. Do they have an upsetting experience, start crying, and then have the thought of, oh, where's my phone? I've got to film myself? And then prop the camera up and sit back down and frame and continue the crying? Afterward, they stop the recording, play it back, maybe do another take, maybe edit it together, and then they make this decision to post it, to distribute it internationally on their account. End quote. Well, at least some of the drama here could be the tendency by progressive elites to assume that everyone agrees with them. William F. Buckley put it this way decades ago, quote, liberals claim to want to give a hearing to other views, but then are shocked and offended to discover there are other views. But of course, had Harris managed to win, there would have been plenty of voices from the right as well, publicly mourning and proclaiming a different version of the same prophecy about the end of democracy. After all, that old adage, if it bleeds, it leads, is just as true about social media as it is traditional media. And Americans don't merely participate, we seem to enjoy it. Across the cultural spectrum, though this is the wealthiest and healthiest and freest society in human history, there's a disturbing number of people, especially before a disembodied online audience, who embrace a dystopian view of reality. Christians, however, cannot embrace this kind of victim stance any more than we can embrace any of the utopian fantasies that defined culture a century ago. Marxism and theological liberalism twisted Christian notions of justice and human history and human potential by downplaying or even denying the reality of sin and the fall. Today, much of American culture feeds on the reality of brokenness brought by the fall, but without any larger context of creation or redemption. Rather than imitating the panic that defines our age, Christ followers are called to embrace what J.R.R. Tolkien called the eucatastrophe, the unexpected reversal of the bad for the better. And we can do exactly that, because the Christian account of reality not only accounts for the evil that's in and around us, but it also assures us who has the final say over all of human history. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
All right, John, thank you much. Outside we go next, Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life weather forecast. Call for this afternoon, blustery and cold. A good deal of clouds, sunny breaks, still some patches of lake snow and flurries, especially southeast of Lake Ontario. High temps 20s. Any flurries fade tonight, partly cloudy, low temps dropping teens for most, single digits for some. Some sunshine tomorrow, high temps 20s to near 30. Cloudy with some snow tomorrow night and Saturday. The Saturday high right around 30.
All right. Kevin, thank you. This is the Noon Report on Family Life. I'm your host, Bob Price, and lots to talk about Thursday, January 9th. Today is a national day of mourning for former President Jimmy Carter. America's 39th president eulogized at a state funeral today at the Washington National Cathedral. All 5 living U.S. presidents were there. Brett Baer at Fox News.
I think one of the things about Carter's legacy, and we can talk about all the policies and we can talk about the criticism, there was also this humility, this sense after Watergate in Vietnam that that's what the country wanted. Looking back at how solid, religious man he was, and he wasn't afraid to talk about it.
Carter's remains are being flown back to his hometown of Plains, Georgia today, where he will be buried next to his wife of 77 years, Rosalind. Today's state funeral, the first in this country since George H.W. Bush was laid to rest in 2018. The death toll is rising from the worst wildfires ever in Los Angeles. Kim Douglas lives in Brentwood.
We're the city of angels, and literally we are in Armageddon. It's unbelievable.
Reporter Ashley Sharp.
As wildfires engulf large parts of Los Angeles County, entire neighborhoods along the Pacific coast and inland have burned to the ground.
2,000 homes and businesses have been destroyed. L.A. County Councilwoman Tracy Parr.
What I am looking at are apocalyptic scenes in every direction, and it's still going to be some days ahead until we can even begin to get our heads around the scope and the scale of the loss.
Donald Trump blames the environmental policies of Governor Newsom for exacerbating the fire crisis. The president-elect says Southern California doesn't have enough water to fight the fire.
Because they're trying to protect a tiny little fish called a smelt. And for the sake of a smelt, they have no water. They had no water in the fire hydrants today in Los Angeles. It was a terrible thing.
Actor James Woods echoes those sentiments. His home burned to the ground in the Pacific Palisades.
When I was getting smoke alarms, there was a fire truck parked in front of my house, but they couldn't pump any water because there was none, because they didn't put them in the reservoirs.
Billy Crystal and Paris Hilton are among the other celebrities who lost their homes in the wildfires. From the fire to the ice, big snowstorm way down south, meteorologist Dave Parkinson.
Texas is going to be the main focus. You're going to be seeing snow in the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area. Could be seeing 4 or 5 inches of snow there potentially. To the south, you'll be seeing some ice, at least a coating of ice, maybe more, and that's going to be really problematic for power outages and travel.
The long-range forecast for us shows temperatures below freezing for much of the rest of the month of January. President-elect Trump met last night with GOP lawmakers on Capitol Hill as he gets set to implement his MAGA agenda in less than 2 weeks. Here's correspondent Ryan Noble.
Mr. Trump's closed-door meeting with Senate Republicans covering a wide variety of topics, senators say, but failing to settle a key debate dividing the party. Whether to split the president-elect's agenda into 2 smaller bills or pour policies on immigration, energy, and taxes into one massive piece of legislation.
And in just 11 days, Donald Trump will become America's 47th president, and that has many wondering, what does it mean for the Middle East? Matthew Faraci with the group Gideon 300 talks to Family Life News about Mideast policy in the second Trump term.
Well, first of all, I just want to encourage your listeners that just because we have a new administration doesn't mean the problem is solved. What it means is that people now have the opportunity to get involved, and their involvement will be leveled up by the conditions that will be created by this new administration. I think you're going to actually see a lot of things take place. First of all, Israel finally takes sovereignty for security reasons over Judea and Samaria, which is falsely known as the West Bank by the left and the globalists. This is the area where the Bible actually took place. And yet, if you can believe it, it's still not considered part of Israel. Yet this is the Israel that we know from Joshua, from David, from Moses, from all the greats in the Bible from the ancient days. This is where Israel took place. So I think you're going to see that. I think you're going to see an expansion of the Abraham Accords, and those Arab countries in the Middle East that are looking to actually do good for their people, they're going to benefit. And then the other thing I think you're going to see is the bad actors, the ones who are trying to sow death and destruction, most notably Iran. I think you're going to see consequences and maybe even a change in regime in Iran from this oppressive Islamic extremist dictatorship to one where the people of Iran actually get to choose their leaders and have a modern society like they used to have a modern society under the Shah. So I think you're going to see a situation where the Middle East could be fundamentally transformed. And we know that because President Trump did an incredible job in his first term, not just for the sake of Israel, but for the sake of the benefit of the prosperity of people all over the Middle East. And he's had 4 years to think about it. And a situation that we've seen that's gotten so much worse, that is so unnecessary. He's completely right that if he had been in office, October 7th would not have taken place. And God's people have the opportunity to get really involved now and bless Israel and bless America at the same time.
That is Matthew Faraci with the group Gideon 300. This is the Noon Report on Family Life.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. On the midday weather map, we're still watching a nearly stationary storm in the Canadian Maritimes and high pressure in the Midwest. The flow between the two generating those cold winds and still some lake flakes. As the high moves east, those winds subside and our weather mellows a bit. But that said, another snowmaker is on the way. Light snows for many of us as we head into the start of the weekend. The call for this afternoon, blustery and cold. A good deal of clouds, sunny breaks, still some patches of lake snow and flurries, especially southeast of Lake Ontario. High temps 20s. Any flurries fade tonight, partly cloudy, low temps dropping teens for most, single digits for some. Some sunshine tomorrow, high temps 20s to near 30. Cloudy with some snow tomorrow night and Saturday. The Saturday high right around 30.
All right, thank you, Kevin Williams at the Weather Center. Finally, noon today, it's National Apricot Day. With more on how to say it and what to do about it, here's correspondent Bree Tennis.
In the UK, they're called apricots. In the US, it's apricot. But either way is fine. The golf ball stone fruit is a cousin to the peach and found around the globe, but it's actually from northeast China. It's action-packed with nutrients, vitamin C, A, B6, and iron. And in the UK, they're considered lucky. But in China, they're not. So side with the UK today and have an apricot. I'm Bree Tennis.
Or is it apricot? The world may never know. And that's our world, the world we live in. Thursday, January 9th. I'm Bob Price. Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.